All right, at 7 o'clock. Today is Tuesday, January 13th. Thank you. 2026, and we are going to start the budget meeting for the city of Jervis.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Frogs, it's just somebody. It's on time. The frog, the resist frog.
Madam Chair and Budget Committee. Promised you a Budget Committee meeting when we had the 23-24 audit published. It hit the street on Friday, 4 days ago. We filed it with the Secretary of State's office yesterday. Paid the $350 filing fee. So the Secretary of State now has, I don't think they've read it yet. They now have the 23-24 audit that has been performed. The council had a very intentional consideration and discussion. Typically, after an audit is complete, we ask our auditor to come in and visit with the city council and have a conversation about it. However, this city council elected to invite the entire budget committee to be a part of that conversation. We'll open it up to a broader spectrum of people, minds, involved parties. So this is the normal review of the audit with the auditor. Normally it's held by the council, but the council wanted the entire budget committee to be engaged, involved, have the opportunity to ask the question. Also present this evening in our back row is the city's CPA consultant, who many of you have met previously and attended previous public finance meetings, as well as city staff members in the room. My name is Rick Holmbaum, and at our most recent council meeting Thursday night, the city council adopted a budget calendar and they appointed a budget officer. While I suggested another name, they appointed me. I gave you a brief sort of overcap view here that I'd like to do a quick run through with. First is a budget agenda that was on page 2. Page 3, 4, and 5 is a letter addressed to the council from the auditor. And I would highlight page 5 with a comment on the far left. You'll see a mark. Some of this other stuff is just addendum type stuff for you to be aware of at a later time. Page 11. Page 11 is what's next for the city. Within 30 days of filing the audit, the city is required by law, statute, to provide a plan of action. How are we going to address the concerns raised, issues raised from the audit? So on the February council agenda, there's going to be some kind of resolution, hasn't been written yet, as to how are we going to address the immediate issues that are raised from this audit report. That's what page 11 and 12 and 13 is actually a sample that they provided coming forth. Page 14 is the budget calendar, which the council adopted at the meeting last Thursday night. I would encourage you to take that home and start saving your dates as it relates to things may change based upon how long it takes to do the next audit. But that is, we have a calendar as a guide as we go through the process and steps. So you have some dates to say. Page 15. Page 15 is a report that I have created and shared. And essentially, what this attempts to do is to provide you with our pattern or lack of pattern as to our general fund. As many are you aware, our serious issue is our general fund. Now, for the last 1, 2, 3, for almost 6 years here, we started, this is the general fund, our general operating fund. We have 26 funds. Anyway, our general fund, we started the year, the fiscal year, in 2020, which would actually have been 2019. So on July 1st of 2019, we started the year with 130,000. We ended the fiscal year in June 2020 with 37,000. So the start of the following year, we started with 37,000. And we ended the year with 255,000. You just follow your way down. We started the year with 255. We ended the year, which would have been June 30, 2022, with 229,000. Then we started 2023, 229. We ended the year with 37,000. On July 1 of 2023, we had 37,000 in the general fund. On June 30, 2024, we were 392,000. Which meant that on July 1, 2024, we had 392 in the red. And the last figure is an unaudited figure based upon staff projection of what we spent 24, 25. In other words, as of 6 months ago, June 30, it is estimated that we started this budget year, 487,000 rent. Now the budget for this year that we're in right now, 25, 26, estimated we would start the year 300,000 in the black. But based upon our pattern and our expenditures, this has been our history as it relates to starting and ending the last 6 fiscal years for the city of Jervis. This is just to give you a snapshot of where our general fund activity has been for the last 6 years. Now, all of you were given a copy of the audit on Friday, hopefully. And I would highlight a couple items. On page 1 of the audit, it talks about the fact that the city of Jervis received what is called an adverse audit. 4 significant stages of audits or types of audits. And I'm sure that your auditor and your legal counsel can provide you with better definitions than I can. But we received in this 23-24 audit, adverse audit. This talks about what an adverse opinion means to us and what it means as it relates to our finances. On page 7 of that same report, I would draw your attention to the second from the bottom paragraph, where it says major governmental funds. The general fund is the primary operating fund of the city. Fund balance was deficit $392,282 as of June 30, 2024. The fund balance decreased by $427,409 during the year. Expenditures exceeded revenues by $406,000. So I'll be open to his interpretation, but essentially I think the auditor is telling us that in the general fund, we spent $406,000 more than what we received. On page 31. It's in the paragraph that says interfund loan. I share this for 2 reasons. A, it's good news. B, it's a road that we're going to travel down. Good news is that in 2014, the city authorized a loan of $220,000 from the wastewater fund to the water fund. And every year since 2014, the city has done a payment for that loan. Now, this was to have enough money in the water fund to build a reservoir. And so in the 23-24 year, this audit year, when the year was over, there was only $22,000 left to pay on that loan. So in the 24-25 audit, which is our next audit, we will pay off that 10-year loan. Now, that's good news because we'll pay off that loan. We paid off that loan 24-25. But this interfund loan option the city exercised in 2014 is going to be a significant part of our life ring, you might say, to deal with the fact that our general fund is in the red. We don't want it to end this fiscal year in the red. So this is a good news that we paid off the loan last year, and also a formula, a tool that we intend to use moving forward. And then the last thing that I would like to highlight is page 61 to 63. In the back of your audit report. And this is the message. This is the meat. Get done with all the facts and figures and estimates and data. This is the message as it relates to the findings and responses from our auditor. So with that, I would like to shift gears and turn it over to our auditor, Ryan, who has blessed us with his presence. This is your opportunity to hear from the source. This is your opportunity to hear from outside of staff people, staff resources. This is your opportunity to ask the serious questions that you want to ask as it relates to this. I think Ryan would like to review this with you. We'll just share some highlights, and then I would invite you to have a conversation with our auditor as the budget committee deems appropriate, if that's okay with Madam Chair.
And I would do my best to answer the questions. Really, I think some of the questions might end up being more management level questions than independent auditor questions, but I'll do my best to assist. So just to introduce myself, my name is Ryan Pascarella. I work for REDW. We're a CPA firm with a location out of Salem here. We used to be Grove, Mueller, and Swank, but we merged with REDW a couple of years ago. And so we've been acting as the independent auditor. I've been in auditing for a little over 20 years now, I guess. Graduated from Oregon State University, lived in this area my entire life, not going anywhere. Absolutely love the Willamette Valley. So this is where I'm going. The city is required to receive an independent audit annually, as I'm sure you know. It is due within 6 months of the end of the fiscal year. As Rick said, the financial statements were just submitted to the audits division here. So it's roughly a year for the 24, with the goal to get started on 25. Yeah. The requirement is that your financial statements get audited by somebody with an Oregon municipal audit license, essentially, because there's some very specific things the state of Oregon wants us to look at as part of the audit, not just the numbers themselves. And the findings, one of the findings in here kind of really relates to Oregon minimum standards more than anything else. So, an audit. What is an audit? Other than the audit team coming in here and asking a whole bunch of ridiculous questions to the finance department, which is truly what an audit is, and asking for all kinds of fun things. What we do is the city finalizes what they think are their numbers for the year, give us ending cash balances, ending expense, revenue balances, all of that. We come in as independent auditors and say we agree, or we potentially can find errors within the financial statements. The purpose of an audit, the goal of an audit, is to receive a clean opinion. And that's actually called an unmodified opinion. You didn't have to make any modifications. That is the goal. Rick mentioned there's actually 4 different things that we can do. There's like a qualified opinion if there's, an issue with like one little area. There's a disclaimer if we don't even audit it. But he mentioned adverse. We're giving an adverse opinion on these financial statements. So as Rick was talking about some of the numbers and kind of the ending cash balances for 24 in there, I'm not giving an opinion on whether that is a correct number or not. I am saying I'm backing off, because an adverse opinion means we could not get the information provided to the audit team necessary to feel that there were no material errors with the statements. And that really relates to the cash reconciliation as of the end of the year, and really the monthly cash reconciliations, because the city could not provide a clear, here's what the bank says, here's all the outstanding things, things in transit essentially, and here's what the accounting records show as the correct balance. We could not get something from the city that allowed us to be comfortable with your ending cash balance in there. The primary reason for that is in the outstanding items, and Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just shooting from the hip here. There was like $1.7 million sitting in there of outstanding withdrawals from your bank account. Basically, you're saying, here's my bank account, or here's my cash balance. I've got 1.7 million that's still going to be running through the bank. That's not going to be an accurate number. And then deposits was like 1.1 million. So those outstanding items, they could hit anywhere essentially within your revenues or expenses. We just don't know where they need to hit or anything. So as an auditor, I can't say I am giving you a clean opinion on these financial statements. It turned into an adverse opinion. Part of that, I think, is to let's expedite this. Let's move forward to FY25. The city still needs to work on that cash balance at the end of 24 for me, because we'll need it if you want a clean opinion in the 25 audit. But for now, we just got it filed. That way, essentially, I could be at this meeting this evening and present a version of the financial statements to you. And so, like I said, did you have something, Sarah?
I want to just clarify because and it's through no fault of yours, because I work primarily with Toby at the audit firm. So what Annie is referring to is absolutely in there, but the issue is not that we don't know what came in and out of the bank account. We know that. The issue is on the system side. So we tied out by vendor who was paid and what was paid. The problem, to dive deeper into detail, had to do with payroll vendors, and that's your PERS, that's the state, that's the Fed on IRS, that's CIS Trust that handles all the employee and police officer health insurance, and some smaller vendors like Aflac and Viva. These payroll AP vendors were not processed correctly on the system side, and they were not paid timely. And because of that, we ended up with a huge amount of that was paid eventually, but got really hosed up in the system. Not only was the amount owed different from what was paid, but that reconciliation work that normally in healthy organizations you see done quarterly was not done at all. And then the system was closed for the year. And what that means is that you couldn't go into the detail of the individual payroll vendors and make it correct to the bank. And they did not get all the way caught up within that year, paying what was owed. So that essentially is why you get to a number like $1 million. It's not that we don't know where the $1 million is and there's $1 million floating out in the universe. We know exactly what went into the bank account and what went out of bank account. And there is no one that was paid, materially or small, that was incorrect or a misuse or misappropriation of funds. That's not what it has to do with. It has to do with the system being really antiquated, and there's no way to fix it at the vendor level, which creates the only way you can make edits to it is at this journal entry level, which there were a number of layers of journal entries made that smushed a lot of things together, and it made it inextractable, if that makes sense, because if there's not enough detail. So if I pay everybody in this room, and increase it by 1,000 or 2,000 every time, but I just lump in, I paid 87,000 and I don't provide you with the detail of who got what. And then I also pay a bunch of other people and a bunch of other people and put it all in the same lines. It just becomes really impossible to try and extricate out, okay, well, his balance was this amount and this amount and this amount. I know I'm getting really detailed, but it just, that times 12 months of activity created these issues. If with FY25, I was able to go through because the year was still open, and PERS was paid this amount every single, and I can go look at PERS and say, okay, this is the total paid to PERS, and this is the total for the bank, and have it match in the system. But I wasn't able to do that with this closed year. Because once the year is closed, which has to be done so that they can bill out utilities, which is again a limitation of this whole system that the city of Jervis relies on, it has to be closed within 90 days. Well, the work wasn't done. So the system had to be closed, the AP vendors were all messed up, and we couldn't go and correct it at a vendor level. FY25, I was totally aware of this. We had time, we worked through knowing that 90-day limit was coming. We knew, we have to get through all these bank recs. We have to get it right at the vendor level, because once that happens, you're closed out. That is not how all these systems out there work. In other systems that I work in, I can get that detail correct. It is a system limitation of Tyler Encode because it's really old, the system will work. So a number of things compounded to create the situation where legitimately the auditors were like, it's not to a point that makes sense where we can get it to the vendor level where they can say, okay, this is what we did, and they have reviewed our bank recs, and they have not in this or personally to any of us raised any red flags on or seen, any sort of misappropriation of funds or anything like that. Luckily utilities and property tax and how we get revenue from the state that goes into the LGIP investment account, that account is completely clean. All of that revenue was reported correctly. We know the checks that went out, we know the ACHs that went out, no payroll, what actually went out, even if it was way short of what should have gone out to those payroll vendors. So he definitely has his perspective, and it's not wrong. I'm not trying to say anything he said was wrong, but I just want to add context to it because I would be really scared if I heard there's a $1.7 million entry out there. Well, that's an accumulation of all. Yes, sir.
Just a point of clarification, when you say outdated systems, do you mean procedures, that type of system, or are you talking about physical things like computers?
That's a
and-
great
And
question.
programs that you're using?
Yeah, thank you for asking that because I do want to be clear. The system that they're using, I'm not sure how old it is. I know that there's only a couple of people that when you call in at Tyler Tech that can support it anymore. So we always get the same lady because they are probably 5 generations out, which come out over 10 years usually from this system. And so this is the system of entry through which they enter time cards and do all the payroll processing. They do all the checks. They receive port revenue and utilities revenue and all the different revenue types. And it has the chart of accounts where they're coding all of these tiny transactions and bigger transactions too. So that's the system of record for the city. And that particular package, I think was in the, if I had to, there's activity back to like 2016, 2015. So it's at least, I'm thinking 10 to 12 years old. I have not looked at that. I don't know if other people in the room might know, but because I know some of y'all have been active in the city for quite a while. So it's that. Now, processes and procedures, that's a different conversation. I know that from what I've reviewed of the work that Deanna's done since taking over payroll in November, I've got clean matches between those payroll vendors and what's in the system. PERS always messes up their timing a little bit. Like if someone adds something or gets a raise or leaves, their timing is always a little off because we enter it the same day and they might not enter it for several weeks. So there's always little differences with PERS, but things are looking really clean now for November. And I've just finished December, but I haven't fully reviewed all the detail again, so I'm not going to comment, but it seems like we've got a staff member now who has processed payroll at different places and knows how to do things and pay timely. So that is a very positive thing for you guys going forward. But yeah, there are serious system limitations that you're contending. That was a long segue, sorry.
I saw you poke your head around there.
Yeah.
Say something, yeah. Please do.
We need to add more explanation here.
I will reiterate that, based on what we're seeing with the financial information, Sarah already said it. We didn't feel like there was any misappropriation of assets or any network fraud. We didn't really pick up that was the issue. It was more the accounting records themselves of how they were being input essentially. And also the, I guess, documentation that was available to prove FY24 numbers or lack of that for some of the items that were there. It took quite a bit for Sarah to figure out some of what was happening.
So based on that comment, then can you even faithfully say that the 392,024 is even accurate? I mean, there's no way to know that.
Yeah, that is why I'm giving that adverse opinion. That is where the financial records came out in the end related to it.
So it may not be that bad. Or it
So-
could be worse.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The bank The operating account bank balance was about 620,000 at the end of 24. What the city showed in their financial records was roughly $100,000. So there's 520,000 of reconciling items to do. I couldn't tell you the 100,000 is an accurate number for the operating. So I'm sure that number at the bottom of your general fund would be adjusted some if the records were better.
So you do think that will kind of resolve through the next audit for next year?
That was part of our meeting that we had last week. I don't even remember what day it was, Thursday. I don't remember. But anyway, we talked about maybe a different approach to looking at how to reconcile the bank account as of the end of 24 and as the end of 25, not relying on what is sitting in the system as much, but more the actual activity that happened by looking at the bank statement and such. Because I'm going to need a better reconciliation for FY25 for both beginning and end of the year. And so that is something we're going to be working on. But there's just no way to verify say the payroll expenses within FY24 because of all of the stuff that's just in there that's inaccurate or redundant or something at that point. Is that fair, Sarah?
Yeah, so, and I don't want to get too detailed, but essentially what happened with payroll vendors is that the amounts accumulated, because what happens is you have, that's not PERS. The city employee pays in and the city pays in, right? And then those amounts go and sit in an account, and then when you write the money to PERS, it comes out of the account. So we had kind of a problem going on where, one, these amounts weren't necessarily being calculated perfectly because they weren't updated. And then we go and file these reports with PERS and they send us bills. So the bill didn't necessarily match what the system was coming up with as owed. That's problem number one. Problem number two was that this is a process and procedures issue. Problem number two is that when you go to pay payroll, so we enter time cards, we process it, so they've already reviewed it, we enter that, it goes to all these different expense accounts, right? Because people like Public Works go to water, they go to storm water, they go to sewer, and they get allocated, so get a little slice in each bucket, right? And so that part was fine. So then it accumulates these things that are due to the third-party vendors, right? The aforementioned vendors. And then you have this separate process, and this is what was missed, where you go into AP and you post all of those, and then you make sure, okay, and then I went and paid $5,000. Does it say I owed $5,000 or does it say I owed $7,000? And so that process was never done, and it wasn't done timely. So at the end of the year, the payments were not always made, and more was owed. So that's why you get such a big difference between, we have 600 grand in the bank, but the system says we only have 100,000 after all these checks have been considered that haven't cleared. Well, the truth is those checks payments were not all even made. They weren't made in the PERS system. They weren't made to Department of Oregon Revenue or IRS. Yes, ma'am. They were made now, but they had to be caught up.
How many years do we have to fix the problem for the city? Because we can't do anything now, just going forward, we have to make sure that it's audited correct, or reported correct.
Well, and we feel that for FY25 that we're going to be in a good place to give a clean opinion on it, assuming that the city can do what they say they're going to be doing and give us the proper documentation. You'll be able to get clean opinion. I won't speak on the negative fund balance within the general fund or anything. That's more management, how to work through.
I've seen entities, bigger entities than the city of Jervis be 3 years behind, and we're still getting all the state revenues. So around that mark is when they start saying we're going to reduce what we give you until you get us a clean opinion. So I don't think we're in danger of having, a hammer come down for 100.
So all we can do is move forward.
Yeah, and, you know, FY 25 we will get out this spring, and then FY 26 hopefully we will, barring everybody getting hit by a bus or something, will come out timely. Right? I mean, I don't think they could take us all out, so I think we should be okay, but, so I think completely comfortable with, and not just being optimistic that, yeah, within by fall of FY 26, y'all should be okay with this date and as far as filings go, but they don't really get mean.
I guess I will say that, I mean, not that good in news, but I do have clients that are farther behind. And nervous at this point, and there hasn't been any comeback from the audit division or the state related to withholding monies. There were some penalties that, I don't know, they implemented for maybe 3 or 4 years and nothing ever really came up where they could withhold some of like the Department of Administrative Services monies. They never enforced it, and then they just got rid of that. When it wasn't doing any good, essentially. Yeah. Okay, after that, Rick did mention a couple of pages within the financial statements, and it's pages 60 and 61. And so these are the two audit findings that we wrote related to the 24 audit. When we're talking about findings, they really, when it comes to like internal control issues and that, they fall into potentially 3 buckets. But basically, like a control deficiency is we looked at the design and the operation of your internal controls, and we found something that either you're not following your policies or a better way to do it, but it's not that big of a deal. We just more or less communicate it to management, give them the opportunity to improve their systems, and move on. There's something called a significant deficiency, where when you take that issue and maybe mix it with a couple of other issues, you could potentially have some errors within your financial statements. That could be decent size. The highest level is what's called a material weakness, where an issue by itself or in aggregate with some other ones could definitely lead to material misstatements within your financial statement, material error. But the 2 findings that are on pages 60 and 61 here, we mark them both as material weaknesses, the highest level. The first one on page 60, it's just called 2024-01, inadequate bank reconciliations and untimely audit reporting. So basically what we've been talking about with the cash account and the reconciliation of it and what needs to happen with that, but also the fact that the financial statements were filed with the audits division roughly a year late. So we turn that into a material weakness. The other item on page 61 there relates more to the budget compliance in there. And so within there, there are, the middle section there is called condition. And so we just have some bullet points of kind of what we saw from a budgeting standpoint, what didn't follow the guidelines. The first bullet point just talks about 3 funds that the amount spent within the funds exceeded the appropriated amount during the year. Potentially there should have been a budget modification in some way to cover those expenditures prior to making those payments. 2 funds on the second bullet point are reported as deficit fund balances. That would be the general fund and the 4th of July fund that are in there. Let's see. On the next one, the general fund's adopted budget for the fiscal year included an estimated beginning balance of, well, actually it just says it's overstated by $565,000. So basically what you said for your 24-25 budget in your budget document, here's where we're going to start with cash. Between that and where the financial statements here ended was a difference of that $565,000. I guess the one little caveat on that is I'm not giving an opinion on that ending cash balance within the 24. So the number could vary some, but it would still be a good size difference in there. So. Okay. And then minor comment, but we've been making it with most of our clients when we do see it. The Oregon Department of Revenue just requires a very precise way of how the budget resolution looks, how it is adopted. And they want it adopted at the organizational unit level, more than just doing it by, per fund, by personnel services, materials and services, capital outlay. They want to see an organization such as water or sewer, similar to how the general fund is adopted with the different departments within the general fund. But that should basically be throughout the document. That is a very minor thing in the grants. But like I said, we're communicating it because that's the way the Oregon Department of Revenue is teaching that they need it that way, want it that way. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I mean, those are really where the audit ended, kind of what we saw, what was reported. Rick already talked about the plan of action that needs to happen and how that needs to be done within the 30 days. So as I told Rick, I'm happy to review whatever on that. It sounds like you might want to sit down and to go through what that plan of action is going to look like. So I'm happy to come back and meet with some people related to that and really just make sure that we can do the best for FY25 that we can. The goal at this point is to get it done, the FY25 by
March.
as soon as we can, yeah. And so I think that there was an extension request that was submitted to the audits division through April of 26. I don't think I've seen a response from them yet. Has anybody heard back from them?
I don't think they responded until they got the 24 because
Gotcha.
they weren't going to respond to the second one out until the first one got resolved.
Yeah, so we're just monitoring to see, and if that's the case, you could potentially be timely with your 25 audit. Fantastic. Other than that, I'm here for questions. Other question?
One of the things brought up was the fact that the system was antiquated. I personally, from experience, know how to work on dual lever carburetors, which most new mechanics nowadays wouldn't know how if they didn't have experience in training. So is it the fact that our system is just so archaic that nobody uses anymore, or nobody's trained up on it?
The system itself is pretty old, and obviously they can talk more to it, but I have maybe a few clients that are still using this system. And the fact that you have to close out a year and you can't get back into it, that tells me right there it's an older system, because that level of detail should be available. So problem is newer systems are not cheap at the same time. So it's what can the city do to actually finance that too? Sorry.
Planned obsolescence that happens with every business.
Yeah.
It sounds like too that we're in a better situation, and it sounds like the systems that are put in place now are working, you said, correct?
Well, we haven't looked at, I'll say this, when I say systems, I'm gonna say the internal control process. We have not looked at those yet. I know what I've been told about the 25 year, saying I'm a lot more comfortable with what it looks like we're gonna be getting for documentation from it.
Okay.
But we have not looked at it. The fact that the 25 year is still open, and you can be looking at that detail, use it while you can, as quickly as you can, right? And get it done.
I have a question too. It said something about the process that we use was cash basis or something, and then
Yeah.
something would work better. Something else would work better. Was that correct?
Not that something else would work better, really. So the state of Oregon allows the city to report on cash basis. I would not recommend the city to go to a full GAAP basis where you're reporting all your accounts payable, accounts receivables, your capital assets. Cash basis is a much simpler way of reporting that the state allows. And honestly, Oregon is one of the unique states that allow that. A lot of places, you have to report everything.
Right, that was my
And so
question.
you would need a larger finance staff if you wanted to be able to do that.
Okay, so we're okay running the way that we're running.
Until the state changes their mind, which I'm pretty sure they never will. So
Okay, perfect. That was my question. Well. And basically, it looks like all the rest of our funds came out on top, and looked good. It was just the general fund was our only.
Yeah, and it is the general fund. And I mean, if you want to look at the general fund in a little bit more detail, as far as the money in, money out.
I saw it was mostly administration fees, just.
It was.
off the
I was
water.
just gonna see what page it was. It's page 13. If people wanted to look at it and just kind of see what the revenues were, 1.2, what the expenses were, 1.6, and that's where you get that negative
Right.
balance popping.
You may have an odd question, but like our miscellaneous funds. Could that have been put into other funds we use, like if they were not marked just as miscellaneous, and they were actually marked to go to like, oh, it was something that we used for water, and they just said, oh, it was miscellaneous, so we just marked
So-
it down, would that have helped us in any way, things like?
So you're saying like in the general fund that 8,600 that's sitting there that's marked as miscellaneous?
Yeah,
Is that what we're talking about?
like if it could have been like, let's say.
That was technically like
No.
something for the
Yeah.
water fund, but it was misplaced.
I
Right?
I would say probably,
Anything.
probably not. What's going to be sitting in that number for the most part is interest income from the LGIP.
Okay.
And so that gets kind of spread out. There's going to be a few other miscellaneous things that kind of pop through there, but I don't think that that's a big factor in what's happening here.
So someone could obviously still use that fund, mark it as miscellaneous, and it could have been used
Previously, yeah.
previously.
Yeah, it
Or
sounds like,
you- like,
yeah, it sounds like we have better system in place for our doing where that's not.
And even where, yeah, and even where I see the amounts that's listed here for miscellaneous revenue on page 13. Those numbers don't look unreasonable to me specific
that's
to
right.
those funds.
Okay.
Based on kind of what you're seeing for the balance, the cash balances within there. So I wouldn't say that 8,000 should have probably belonged somewhere else because general fund does deserve some of that.
Okay.
And there's an allocation process when LGIP just gives you, here's your interest for the month, essentially. And the city takes that based on cash balances or something like that, and they're gonna allocate it to the individual funds as miscellaneous income.
Oh,
If you want to look at page 34, it goes into the general funds budget to actuals. And I think that gives you kind of a different look on what went where and where, you know, versus the budget the city had varied.
Well, I don't, our revenue down 50 grand in one year, that was kind of odd. It's not something you can anticipate.
Well, all under administration. Not just
No.
public works and you,
Uh-huh.
but for lawyers.
Mhm.
That's, I mean, all.
PERS, COG, all that. Yeah.
Professional services, was a significant, everything from auditors to legal counsel to anything that city engineer works on that's not related to water or sewer. Things that we hire to have done by outside. Professional services is probably 50% of that.
I'm pretty sure we didn't hire any. Well, with the
the understanding is that we can't break down. Yes, correct.
What's in the expenses for the administrative? There are individual expense accounts that make up that balance. This is just the subtotal of those accounts. So there is detail, at least at the expense level, and honestly, even at the GL detail level, of more than, yeah. That number, we can provide. Sarah and Brett can provide you more information on what individual makes that up.
Yeah, so, what is harder to do is, trace the payments to the vendors. So there were a huge amount of payments that weren't actually made to those parent vendors. So if I go and look at PERS, it says, oh, we paid out this amount. Well, those payments didn't get made. So those were outstanding at year end and caught up eventually in FY25. And that's the same with IRS and Department of Water and Revenue. They got the time with all of those payroll vendors, but then kept posting the payments in the system that they were paying at the time. Does that make sense? It's like writing checks in your checkbook that get recorded, but then you don't mail the checks.
Are these like monthly payments or are these like?
So every time you run a payroll, whether it's big or small, meaning that you just forgot a shift that somebody made or didn't pay your overtime, you run a special payroll of any size, you have payments due to all your taxing authorities. Maybe you don't need to pay your health insurance again, but you pay that one payment out and it's $80. You've got to pay everybody, or they charge you interest and fees on that balance that was due that you didn't pay timely. You have about 3 to 4 business days to make all those payments every time you make a payroll.
So like you might pay $75 to the employee, but you still gotta pay $5 to security,
Yeah, I was just wondering like,
unemployment,
if some of these are just paid like monthly, bi-weekly, and
and
then they were.
quarterly.
Yeah, health insurance, for instance, is paid monthly. PERS can be paid monthly or you have bi-weekly payroll. You can give it so much. Kind of varies based on.
So I keep running a pretty mention you're gonna take benefits, that doesn't sound terrible. I guess my curiosity is this, I don't really want to litigate as like a who's blame would fall with them, more like don't want to fall this pitfall again. I know we had a lot of legal expenses that year. Is that a big piece of this?
There's a big piece of that. The city was being sued by,
It wasn't me.
and I will stop talking to him. Lawyers, so yeah. So the city has a number of lawsuits that are in whatever state they are in, and that cost the city a lot of money. They were also paying people who were on leave and then paying for their replacement who was doing active service at a premium. They also had a lot of contract labor on the office side. So anytime you have, a temp person, maybe that's a $20 an hour role, but you're going to be paying $80 for it when you're hiring from a temp agency. So, and then there were special elections, right? And so all of that was expensive. It's expensive to do all that noticing with the newspapers. Those are a couple grand each notice, which is insane. And I know Rick's looked at how to save money on that because it's nuts. But you have to notice whenever you're having a public vote or public meeting legally so that the community has a chance to see it. I think he has a way to do that cheaper. You just have to change like the newspaper record. But every time we did that, and then Marion County charged the city a lot for those special elections as well. Those are the things off the top of my head, but whatever detail you would like to see by vendor or whatever, just need to work with management and between us, we can definitely get you that information.
Again, it's really can't go back.
Yeah, we can't go back.
This sounds like we just need to go on. It's expensive, right?
The milk is spilled.
I want to say that in the last spring, you've seen the city hire experienced personnel. Or I'm sorry, spring to fall. And that Rick has been a city manager before. Preston before him had been a city manager. You've got Deanna here now who has has multiple cities and prior experience doing payroll, doing AP, doing AR. Desiree now has been here a year doing those utilities receipts. And I know between all of them, they're handling port revenue. So you brought in people who have done these jobs before. And so, you know, to me, just share this because we're here tonight. The biggest lesson to take away as you guide the city for the next generations is hire experienced degree personnel to do those jobs, and make sure that you keep them accountable, and if people start drowning, that they know that you are a safe space to come and say, I'm doing 2 jobs and I'm drowning. I don't think I'm doing everything. That you get help in early and you get the right help. You just really, even if you have to pay a little bit more to get degreed experienced personnel who worked for city government or county government, because it's not even non-for-profit is different. And I think, you know, not trying to get on a pedestal or lecture anybody, but that is like a really important message to take away and tell all your friends and neighbors that like we'll never, you know, plug and play again. These people are essential to the operations of our city, and making sure that we know where the dollars are being spent timely so that before you get into trouble, you know, you have the ability to correct and make decisions. The legal stuff, I don't know. That's why you said job security. So I can't help that as much, but
I don't know what you said, but I don't like it.
From a staff perspective, 23-24 audit. I wouldn't want to call it a stepping stone, but it is a void that we're having to fill in order to move forward to 24-25.
It's a big lesson learned.
It is. Because we can't move forward with the opportunity of success that we define on it without stepping through 23-24. And so I'll admit from a staff perspective, it's a little bit of a bitter pill. Professional perspective, I perceive it as being sort of the strategy that I have to bring this adverse audit to the budget committee, which the council would need to approve.
Yes.
Audit council. Council need to approve this audit. And quickly, we thought 25.
And we have procedures in place to prevent this from happening again.
We're gonna have.
Well,
Right, and I understand that, but I mean, one of the things they pointed out was failure to reconcile the bank statements. Anybody who has a checkbook knows they have to reconcile the bank statement.
So we made a, international council. This is one of those councils is, 25%. What are the higher priorities from a sentence plan? Or things like that, so that, something hits the fan that we have.
Well, one of the things that is, you know, a checks and balance system. I mean, so you're responsible for balancing the checkbook. Well. But what I'm saying is there, not to say that Rick won't do his job, but do we have an oversight where we can, you know, especially, I mean, how much did we pay in late fees and interest on PERS that didn't get paid, or the feds didn't get paid, or the state didn't get paid.
I think.
Yeah.
Please correct, one of the oversight is the council, everyone's saying, hey, or whoever's behind, that you are saying, hey, what's going on, what's going on here? Because the whole point of this gentleman, I believe, is that he is independent of everything.
Right.
And we have to report, the council has to be like, hey, that guy with the turn on, can he come back and talk to us?
Yeah.
Get a job?
Yeah.
Honestly, if you can. I do believe from the in this community, the offset in this fight is very detrimental.
Oh,
But I do think also, like, if the council's not doing their job, please come tell us, because we also.
We're human.
So,
We're all human. We're all human, we're all on the same team. We just need to get past this so we can staff our police department. And so we can
Right.
move forward.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the budget committee also part of holding them accountable for, hey, does this get reconciled? I see this is on the budget. I mean, that's why we have budget meetings, right?
Well, it would need to be more formal than that, and somebody should actually have the physical responsibility. I mean, just saying loosely, we have to hold you accountable, this thing, because I really don't know what you're.
Well, that's what a budget meeting is. We call a budget meeting and
your
say,
point
hey,
is, this is, but start with big for being, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
It's about regularity of the meetings, and usually they happen because so we have that dialogue. I think the worst thing that happens is when, to your point, we just assume they're doing it, and so we have to have those conversations. Come here 3-4 times a month.
If I may,
Well, and-
suggest what I've seen, other cities do and what I prepare, because some cities don't have anyone who has a finance background, they're really small. So for one client that I have, and this you'll do in-house, every month I do the bank rec and the statement. I show them any journal entries I created or transactions that didn't flow through like the utility system. They see a budget to actual report for the month, and then it also has year to date. And I think he also prints out like a check register. Here's everything that we paid this month. Now, during the prior city manager's tenure, I don't know what the council was seeing on a regular basis, but I've had to get into the minutes sometimes, and I did see that they were seeing check registers. So they were seeing the payments that went out, but maybe not the rest of the package that I think would allow you to really know like the overall picture. But that's a pretty good package to see because then you get experience with, okay, this is a monthly bill. Oh, this is a little high, just like you do with your own personal bills. You know, oh, my water bill is high, etc. And so that kind of gives everybody in the room experience, so that then when you come up on the end of the year and professional fees is a little bit high, you've already got that knowledge. Oh, that's right, we had that, citizens sue us because of the pothole incident or whatever, and that we had that extra expense this year. So that is how I've usually seen it work really well. You need about 2 to 3 weeks after the month, because LGIP, for instance, comes in 10 days after the month or so, so that you can get everything in. But that works really well. So you can just track it as you go on through time, and you really learn what everything looks like month to month. And so then you're not surprised. You don't want to be surprised.
So those are the processes you were talking about. In place.
yeah, they've already started implementing them, because she said that the past couple months, you were like, I got everything I need, it's all reconciled, it looks good.
Yeah, through November and actually December finished this week, but I still need to do my review. So it's right there. Yeah, and so then I'm sending everything to Rick, the spreadsheet that backs it up, the bank statement that ties it to it, and the bank reconciliation register, with the thought being that now we're approaching being able to also have a monthly budget to actuals and a year to date. We could print that right now. It's just Deanna and I are still going through coding stuff and finding things that just just got it's not where they need to be. So, I don't want to send you 5 versions of something. I would rather feel like we've gone through it and feel good about where everything is posted and then run it for you. But I feel like we're getting very close, at least on FY 26. And FY 25, we're doing the same work. We're going through, the accounts like kind of line by line to say, okay, does that make sense? Is that where it's gonna be? And somebody mentioned miscellaneous revenue. That's one of the things that we are going through because it seemed like it was a kind of a little catch-all. And most of those things should have a home, you know.
That's what I was
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
wondering if
So
they
it's
should
actually
have a
something
home.
we were working on this afternoon, lighting ones that we got to be recoded. So that's the kind of work that we're trying to do so that everything's clean for the audit, that you guys can feel good that, you know, if that number is whatever, that you can rely on that, then Rick and you all can make decisions about future and make good plans.
And from an auditor perspective, quite a few of my smaller cities I work with do something similar to what's there. And the fact that you have like maybe 2 levels of, I'll say, potential review of the information. Sarah's doing the work along with the staff. Rick's doing kind of his review of what was done. And city council looks at it after that. And that makes your auditor happy for seeing that. And really, if you're seeing the level of detail that you need to be able to ask the right questions, is really what it is. It might take some time to tweak the reports coming to make them useful for the city council. Essentially, the AP list is pretty straightforward. Some of the other ones get confusing. Ask questions, learn it. You know, and like I said, you like your auditors to be happy with what the internal systems are. It makes all of our job. It allows us to get out of here a little quicker, honestly.
Hopefully it's cheaper for us too.
That is always the goal. The less hours I have in doing it, the cheaper it is.
So my question is, Rick, you said it needs to be approved. Does it need to be approved in this meeting for budget council or city council? Okay, perfect. And then our plan of action also needs to be filed with the state within the 30 days. Which you're working on.
And approval, Rick, it doesn't mean that you like it. It just means that you've seen it and
Right.
you've reviewed it.
I-
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Approval seems to mean different things. Yes, it means you've accepted it.
Perfect.
Now that you're actually getting ready to push back for everybody, sounds like it's on 5, get more information, get quicker. Are we already presuming that the additional 100K on top of it, of this red line is the same reasons, administrative overhead cost?
Let me make sure I'm looking at the number this coming up. You're at page 15?
Yeah,
So correct, it
just the
is,
general fund.
it is still, you're still looking at, higher than budgeted legal contract services being the biggest. But I will tell you, I have not gotten super into this yet. So I would put asterisks around that's what I've glanced at, and but that's a historical memory, and I haven't looked at that right now recently, so I need to.
We've shared everything we have to share. Auditor, have a conversation with council. Gave those budget committee and council. If you got,
Well, correction, Rick, we only have the budget committee here tonight because the budget committee prizes the members of the city council, but is not separate from the city council.
right, thank you for that.
We're both equals.
Which is why we sit down here rather than have all. So, if you've got a particular question about particular facts, feel free to have an email or those. I do. I believe both the auditor and Sarah, hopefully I have provided you with a perspective as to where we're at. Facing where we want to go. Hopefully as quickly as possible.
This was asked if last month, and we don't want to read it, but so far we're on budget for this year, we plan on not overspending on that base.
We're not overspending, but we don't have the money that we thought we had.
And
in
the
the
first,
budget.
that's,
Start the
yeah.
year.
So it sounds like what Rick's wanting to do is to look at that other option we did in the past, which is borrow money from one
Yeah.
fund and move it together. My question or concern with that is if we are short on revenue, how will we pay that borrow? It does not get paid out of the general fund. That would be my own concern. Work that in.
That's my reasons.
Yes.
All right, that was my only concern. But I like where you're going, it's doable, we've done in the past. Yes.
Anything else, Madam Chair?
We did adjourn.
Unless they've got something else they want to talk about.
Okay. Everyone's good, no one got any more questions? All right.
On the budget committee, I just wanted to know if you filed this for 24 with the state, and then you're working on 25, will you
Yes,
have to go back and file an amendment if you, to make it a clean report that you're talking about?
I believe your question is, do we need to amend the 25?
The 24
24.
that we just filed with the state.
24 has already been filed. We went to the Secretary of State's office yesterday. So we can't change 24. Any question?
No, my question was, is that you go forward with 25 based on some of the more information that's yet to get a clean.
We have more information to accomplish as it relates to reconciliation within 24 in order to get the 25 on done.
So you don't have to follow.
That's not our intent.
Excellent question. No more questions? All right. It is 8:12 and the budget committee meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.